and hopefully you can all see those. So yeah, yes, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to speak today. My name's Lucy Barnes. I'm Senior Editor and Outreach Coordinator at Open Book Publishers, which is a scholar-led, non-profit, open access book press based in Cambridge in the UK. Oh, hi, Elena. I don't think your mic's muted. Would it be possible to mute it? Thank you. And I'm also one of the coordinators of the Open Access Books Network, as Margarita mentioned. And I'm also presenting today alongside Andrea Davidson, who is another one of the coordinators of the network. Andrea, did you want to say hello now, or when you start your part of the presentation?
I'll say a quick hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you. So what's going to happen is I'm going to speak a little bit to begin with, and then Andrea is going to take over. So I'm going to talk, starting with the basics, really, about what an open access book is, and why you might want to publish open access, or why a researcher might want to publish open access, what to know when you publish an open access book, particularly because there are certain things which are different to closed access publishing, like open licensing and like the funding of open access books. And then we're going to move into Andrea's section, and Andrea will talk about what the Open Access Books Network does, about useful resources that we share about open access book publishing, so if you want to learn more, and how you can stay in touch with us and find out more about OA books. So starting with, as I say, the real basics. What is an open access book? It's a book that's freely available online as an ebook, and that might be in a number of different formats. It might be in a PDF, it might be HTML, it might be an EPUB, and there are some other formats like XML, but they're less common. So an open access book will always be available digitally, and it will always be freely available. It might also be available in print. Quite often, open access book publishers publish paperbacks and hardbacks. We do at Open Book Publishers, for example, and that's one of our books there on the screen. But it will definitely always be available online. And it will have an open license, which will tell you in what ways you're free to read, share, and reuse it without having to ask permission of the publisher or the author, whoever the rights holder is. And I'm going to talk in a bit more detail about open licenses later on. Because open access books are freely available online, they will have many more readers than a closed access book. And as a result, we're starting to see some evidence that they are cited more frequently as well, because they're easier to access. And they are available all over the world. You don't have to be in a particular place to access them. As long as you've got an internet connection with access to the open internet, then you can access these books. So thinking a bit more about closed access versus open access and why you might want to publish an open access book. The average academic monograph, so a single authored academic book or an edited collection of chapters, will sell maybe 200 to 400 copies in its lifetime. And there's some evidence that that figure is declining as well. So fewer people are buying fewer people are buying closed access academic books. And that tends to be often because they're priced very highly. They're priced typically at sort of 90 to 140 euros, and mostly therefore bought by university libraries rather than by individuals, which means that in order to access these closed access books, you probably have to have access to a university library. And I imagine we probably have some librarians on the call, and if so, you'll be well aware that ebook access can be actually a lot more expensive for libraries. You know, the sort of standard single purchase of an ebook might be roughly similar to the paperback or the hardback, but for libraries, the licenses can be a lot more expensive. Whereas open access books are accessed much more frequently. So again, thinking about the press I work for, Open Book Publishers, our books are accessed freely worldwide over 80,000 times each month. And that's, as I've said, because they're available everywhere with an internet connection. And that makes them easier for academics to access. And also thinking about academics who may not have a position at an institution, who may not have that easy access to an academic library. So it's easier for independent scholars. Also, there might be people, policymakers, for example, who you might want to use your research, depending on your subject. It might be health professionals, it might be teachers, or ordinary members of the public who might want to learn more about whatever subject it is that you research in. And I often find that authors are maybe a bit modest about the reach that their research might have. They often think, well, my subject's very, very minor, very niche. People aren't going to be interested in my work. But actually, they find that a surprising number of people, and across quite a breadth of the world, are accessing their book and are reading their book. So they're often taken aback by the level of interest that there actually is. And if there's going to be more readers of your book, then that means there will be more opportunity for those readers to do something with the book. So whether they're going to cite it in a piece of academic work, whether they're going to use it for their job, whether it's going to inform how they vote or how they think about the world. As long as it's openly accessible, more people are going to access it and it's going to be able to be more impactful. And just to say, I don't know how clear it is on your screen, but the graph on my slide there, again, is Open Book Publishers books. It's our readership over several years from 2009 to 2023. And the figures may not be that clear to you, but the colours hopefully are. And the different colours are different platforms where the book is openly available. And those are the platforms that send us data about how often the books are downloaded. But because the books are open access, there'll be many other places where they're available that we can't track. And people will be sharing them between themselves, and we can't share that. We can't track that either. So this usage is, we think, pretty good, but it's also only an indication of part of the usage. The usage will be bigger than that, than you can see on there. And as I mentioned, sometimes people think, well, then that means my book will be online, but I want a paperback or I want a hardback copy. But a lot of presses that publish open access books will also publish physical books. So this is a photograph of our office at Open Book Publishers, which actually doesn't exist anymore because we've gone remote since COVID. But I took this photo a few years ago just to indicate these are books of ours, and they all exist in paperback and hardback, as well as all being open access from the date of publication. So it depends on the publisher, but I think it's safe to say that most publishers that publish open access will also produce physical copies. I wasn't sure whether to include this or not because it's such an obvious point to make, but if you're considering publishing a book, make sure that it's a press that will peer review the work rigorously. And I think this might be a particularly worthwhile point to make with open access, because if you're considering open access publication, you might be thinking about a press like Open Book Publishers. And we've been going for sort of 17 years now, which is quite a long time for an open access press, but it's not a long time in terms of the history of publishing. So you might be considering a press that you don't know very well and that you've not perhaps heard of before. So then it's really important to make sure that this press is a reputable press, that they have a rigorous peer review policy for your book. So for us at Open Book Publishers, we ask for a proposal, which is then reviewed internally. Our managing editor will review it alongside our editorial board. And if we're interested at that point in finding out more about the book, then we'll ask for the full manuscript, and the full manuscript will be reviewed by at least 2 experts in the field. And that's our process. Other publishers will have slightly different processes, but you should feel satisfied that you understand what the review process is and that you think it's sufficiently rigorous to make sure that the work the press is publishing is high quality work. And this is the point about licensing that I made earlier. So whenever a book is made open access, it will be shown that it's open access because there'll be a license attached to it. Typically in academic publishing, that license is a Creative Commons license. And there are a number of different types of Creative Commons license, which will give you more freedom or less freedom to use the work without asking permission of the rights holder. So when you publish an open access book, it might be you as the author who says, well, I want this license. It might be the publisher who says, we recommend this license, or in some cases, we will only publish your book open access under this license. Or it might be your funder or your policy maker that says, you are publishing this book because we funded your research, so we want it to have this particular license. But I think it's important to understand what the different licenses mean. Also, as a reader, as a user of open access books, it's important to understand what they mean. So this sort of little table or graph on here kind of shows you the range of CC licenses. I won't go through every one, but just to give you an idea, the most permissive license is CC BY or CC BY. So under this license, if you have an open access book that's CC BY, you can take it apart and just share a chapter or 2 chapters, or put a chapter in a course book, for example. You can translate it if you want to. You can make commercial use of it, so you could translate it and sell the translation. And you could do all of those things, and all you have to do is to attribute the original book. So say, this is the original, this is the link to where the original is available online, open access. And then from there, they get more restrictive. So the next one, CC BY NC. NC stands for non-commercial. So that means you can share it as a chapter, break it apart and share just a chapter. You can put it a chapter or 2 in a course book. You can translate it. You can do all those things that you can with CC BY, but you can't use it commercially. And if you want to use it commercially, you have to go to the rights holder, who might be the author, might be the publisher, and say, please, can I use this book commercially? And then it will be like it's a closed access book and you're asking for those permissions. And then there are other kinds of conditions. So the ND license, CC BY ND, that's no derivative. So that means you can't split it up into chapters. You can't make a translation unless you go to the rights holder and say, can I do these things? And you can combine these licenses. So the most restrictive license on there is CC BY NC ND. So that's non-commercial and no derivative. So essentially what you can do there is you can openly and freely share the book, but you can't remix it or make a translation of it. You can't do anything commercial with it. And the other thing to be aware of with licensing is that when you sign a contract with a publisher, you're going to grant that publisher a license to publish your book. And the publisher will ask for certain terms, and those terms will vary depending on the publisher. So understand that contract and understand what rights you're giving to the publisher. If you're unsure, then ask advice. Maybe you can ask a librarian, maybe you can ask a legal expert, but just try to make sure that you're not just signing something blindly. And particularly if you're applying a more restrictive license to the book, so say you're thinking, well, I want to apply NCND, that's the license I'm comfortable with, then it matters who makes the decision. If somebody wants commercial use of that book, who are they going to have to ask permission of? Is it going to be you as the author, or is it going to be the publisher? Have you signed those rights to decide over to the publisher? And that's worth considering even with closed access books, because, for example, recently there was a lot of upset from authors because Informa PLC, who owned Taylor and Francis, did a deal with, I think it was Microsoft. But anyway, it was a company that wanted to use their books to train AI, and the authors had signed the rights over to Taylor and Francis to say yes or no to this request, and Informa said yes, and lots of the authors were very upset, but they had no right to complain because unfortunately they'd signed those rights away when they signed the contract. So funding your open access book, this can also be quite complicated sometimes, depending on the publisher. So there's different kinds of funding models, and lots of them are grouped under these kinds of precious metals and colours and this kind of system. So I'll try and sort of deliver it as simply as possible. So gold open access is where the publisher will make the book open access, but they might require a fee from the author, a mandatory fee. And these fees can vary enormously. So they can be as low as around €7,000, and they can be as high as €30,000 or more per book. And so if you're interested in publishing OA with a publisher that will charge this kind of fee, you're very likely going to be looking for funding to cover that cost from your institution, maybe from a funder, an external funder. So I would always recommend try and seek transparency about what this fee pays for, particularly because I know for open book publishers, I know what it costs us to publish an open access book. And some of these fees that are kind of the much higher ranges, the kind of 30,000 plus ranges, I really do wonder what that's actually paying for, because I don't think it's paying for costs. I think it's what the publisher thinks somebody will pay. So I think it's always worth trying, if you can, to seek transparency about that. And then there's diamond publishers, and open book publishers is one of these. So a diamond press won't charge a mandatory fee for authors to make the book open access. Diamond publishers often are scholar-led, or they might be university-led. If they're university-led, then it might be that it's free for the people who are members of that university, but it might not be free for others. So it's worth digging into that. And they achieve this by different funding models. And if people are interested in the Q&A, I can talk about open book publishers and other models and how these presses manage to cover their costs without asking a fee from authors. But I'd say if you're interested in publishing open access books, then don't ignore the born open access presses like open book publishers, because from the feedback that we get, we do a very good job comparable with more traditional publishers, and we aren't going to be charging mandatory fees to authors to make the book open access, so it's worth considering. And then there's green. Again, if you're familiar with journal publishing, you'll be familiar with this. A green open access book is a book where the publisher is not making the book open access. They're just making it available closed access. But they say to the author, you can put your manuscript somewhere like an open repository, a library repository, and make it openly available that way. They might still ask for a fee to do this. Some publishers do ask for a fee, even if it's only green. And they might also say you can't make the open version freely available for 6 months or 12 months or 24 months. So be aware of that. And I'd also consider, is this the right fit for your book? Because some of the books that we publish, I receive the manuscript as the editor, and it's very clean, it's very well written, it's very polished. There's not a lot for me to do in terms of, sort of editorial input. And there might not be a lot of images in the book either. And in those cases, then yes, probably if you as the reader read the manuscript version of that book, you get something roughly equivalent to the experience of reading the book. But then there are many other books where the manuscript requires a lot of editorial work, for example, or where the book has many, many images that couldn't be included in a manuscript version. And in those cases, as a reader, if you read the green version, you'd be getting kind of a substandard version of the book. So consider if it's the right fit for your book. And I'd also say beware embargoes. If a publisher says, we'll make the book open access, or you can make a green version open access, but we want a big delay before we'll make the open access version available, that can breach policy conditions if you're publishing because a policy has told you that you have to publish open access. So just be aware of that. And then finally, before I hand over to Andrea, thinking about books and journals and some of the differences between them when they're open access. So I don't think I'm telling anyone anything they don't know already when I say that a book is longer than a journal article. And so they're much more time consuming to write. They're much more of an investment from the author. And they can also be more time consuming to publish, although looking at the timelines for some journal articles, I don't think that's actually always the case. But there is a lot of effort and work involved in editing a book, in typesetting a book, obviously, and indexing a book, all those kinds of different things. And there are different funding models, obviously, to achieve them. So I've spoken a little bit about that already. For journals, you obviously have much more prevalence of things like transformative agreements, which you don't have so much in the book world. APCs have their equivalent in the BPCs, the Gold Open Access charges that are sometimes levied for books. And there are also diamond models for open access books. Some of them have similarities with subscribe to open models in journals, and some of them are quite different. So the kind of library funding model that Open Book Publishers has, for example, that I can talk about in the questions if people are interested, that's quite different, I think, to what you see in journals. We've sort of had open access for books probably later than open access for journals. It's developed more slowly. And as a result, there are fewer policies that insist on open access for books. And also, when there is a policy, they'll probably be more flexible about the kind of license you apply to your book. So I mentioned the licenses a little while ago. Often with journal publishing, you'll find CC-BY is mandated. For books, there's a lot more flexibility because people understand that there are differences between journals and articles and books, and that therefore it might not always be appropriate to levy a CC-BY license. And again, I can talk more about that in the questions if people would like. Books are also less lucrative for publishers. Certainly monographs and edited collections are less lucrative. Textbooks are different. But as a result, it means they're less aggressively commercialized. So I think in book publishing, as opposed to journal publishing, there is more space at the moment for innovative and equitable models, for these diamond models, to maybe gain a bit of a foothold. But I think for that to happen, they need support. They need authors to publish under those models, and they need libraries to be willing to fund those models. So I think that's important to be aware of as well. And now I will hand over to Andrea.
Thank you, Lucy. All right. With that overview of what are open access books behind us, now we can look at the Open Access Books Network, which we represent. And we'd like to share some information about the OABN with you so that you feel very welcome to join us or to consult our resources or attend our events in the future if open access books is a topic that matters a lot to you. So the OABN is an open and free network for anyone interested in open access books, and we offer a dedicated space where the OA Books community can come together to engage around how the future of open access book publishing takes shape. And we have events, resources, discussions, and more, as you can see on the leaves of that flower there. And I'll go over that in a second. But first, we bring together a range of stakeholders, publishers, librarians, researchers and authors, funders and policymakers, infrastructure providers, and anyone else who's interested in this topic. Lucy, could you advance the slide, please? Thanks. Here are our aims. We aim to advocate for open access book publishing, collate news, views, and developments specifically relevant for OA books for the community, and to connect a global community in the form of events, workshops, blogs, social media, other activities, and to address the unique set of challenges and needs to enable OA book publishing to thrive and flourish in the future. The OABN has 3 coordinators, Lucy from Open Book Publishers, me from Spark Europe, and our colleague Silke Davison from OAPN. Those are our logos down at the bottom. And then now looking again at that flower, you can see the range of activities and resources that we provide for the community. And I'll be going into a little more detail. Lucy, could you please advance the slide? But first, for some context. So the Open Access Books Network is part of OPERAS, the Open Scholarly Communication in the European Research Area for Social Sciences and the Humanities. Oof, that's a mouthful, as you can see on the logo there in the corner. So we are a working group that meets regularly and welcomes members from all over the world, but we're part of this European organization, OPERAS, and we're a part of the Open Access Books Special Interest Group, which also meets regularly. And this special interest group coordinates the OABN's efforts for open access books alongside other working groups that are interested in OA book publishing at OPERAS, the OA Business Models Group and the Open Infrastructure Group. And we work together to ensure that academic books are more firmly embedded in European and global open science policies and infrastructures. Could you advance the slide, please? Let's take another look at the resources that the OABN offers. We have, I'll move sort of counterclockwise is the way I want to go. And we'll start with events. We have regular events throughout the year. Actually, our next event is just a working group meeting, but you would be very welcome to join us there. But I've listed some of the past events that we held over the last few months so you can get a flavor of what we do. Our most recent event was with some researchers, authors who had received funding from the European Research Council and had to publish OA books according to their funding mandate. And so they reflected on their experiences and shared what they learned with an audience of other authors and of course anyone else who was interested who attended the event. We also had a policy-a-thon for open access books, building on previous work with the Palomera project that the Open Access Books Network was engaged in to look at updating a collection of OA book policies or open policies from institutions across Europe according to the way that they represent books in those policies. And then we had events on services for OA book policymaking and an event on managing third-party materials in OA books. So we do try to reach out to our different stakeholder groups in the events that we plan as well. We also have a blog on our website, and we have posts that cover a range of topics, updating on our activities and events. And we also feature guest blog posts, including in different languages. We've made a big effort with a series, I've put the picture here because it's so nice, around the world with the OABN, a series where guest authors share the state of open access book publishing in their country or region, and they have written in English, but also in the languages of their region. So if you're interested in learning about open access books initiatives and especially open access books in different countries, our blog is a place to go. Also, we're still running this series. So if anyone's interested in a post on Latvia, we don't have one yet. That would be most welcome. And then we have resources as well that are for specific stakeholder groups. So for example, one of the resources that we have for publishers is a quarterly meeting that we organize with representatives of national associations for OA books. And there are 3 who are meeting regularly together. Resources for authors, librarians, funders. You'll have to go to our website to see the lists that we have there, because we have our own resources and we also collect other resources that are available online. Lucy, could you advance the next slide? Then I give you an example of the resources that we have for librarians. I'm not going to go into detail here because I'm conscious of the time, and it's really most interesting if you can go through it and explore these resources yourself. But you can see we have informational videos about OA books. We point to other resources not created by us that are available on the web. And we connect OABN members with other networks as well, and so on. So please do visit our website to see more, and the link is in the chat. Next slide, please. Looking ahead to what we have planned for next year, if you're considering joining us and you'd like to know what might be on the table, we are together with the network and the members who've given us their perspectives on what's important for OA books in the year ahead. We're looking at learning more together about AI for OA books, because this is an important issue. And then thinking about small publishers of OA books, how we can build on the resource that is our blog to share more information about publishing with a smaller publisher, and also in different national contexts and language contexts too. Next slide, please. You're very welcome to join the OABN if our work is of interest to you and you'd like to be part of our community. So please do connect with us. Visiting our website, you can join our mailing list to keep up to date. We're also active on Knowledge Commons, Blue Sky, and you can join our Operas working group as well to meet regularly and discuss with other OA books professionals from across Europe. And you can write to us if you have your own event, blog series, or something else you'd like to propose. We look forward to hearing from you, and thanks.